I want to I want to thank Barbara for doing this today. We greatly appreciate it. Barbara is a leader in our community, serves on many committees and charities throughout the region, and we are eternally grateful. Barbara, I hand it off to you.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. I appreciate it. It's Dan and I really enjoy our involvement with JNF. I can already tell this meeting is starting off way better than I anticipated, because at 3 o'clock this morning, I woke up from a nightmare in which I had slept in. I showed up in my pajamas and horrors with no makeup, and I couldn't get the link working. I was going all over the place to get the link working. So far, so good. Now, Avi and I spoke last week, and he says, please don't give a long introduction. Just say that I'm a father and a grandfather of 8, but I'm going to give you a little bit more than that. So our guest, Avi Dichter, has been a member of the Knesset since 2006 and is a member of the Likud party. He currently serves as head of the Special Committee of the Fund for Israeli Citizens. From 2005 to 2019, he served as chairman of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. His past roles have included Deputy Minister of Defense, Minister of Public Security, Minister of Home Front Defense, and the Director of Shin Bet, the Israeli Security Agency. In a volunteer side of life, Mr. Dichter was chairman of the Foundation for the Benefit of Holocaust Victims in Israel, which was an extremely meaningful position as he is the child of Holocaust survivors. He holds a BA in Social Sciences from Bar Ilan University and an executive MBA from Tel Aviv University. He also served as a research fellow at the Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C. He's married with 3 children and 8 grandchildren and lives in Ashkelon. Welcome, Avi.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you very much, all of you. It's a great pleasure to talk more than 10,000 kilometers far away and to see you in a very small square, but it's better than nothing, or better just an audio talk. But we should focus today on the Abraham Accord, or maybe wider than that, because the Abraham Accord is related to the UAE mainly and Bahrain, but the region is going through a huge change. I think that since the peace accord with Egypt implemented in '82 and Jordan implemented in '94, we haven't seen such a dramatic change. And we all remember that this change is coming at the end of a decade, which is labeled as the Arab Spring, which was everything but not a spring. But it's interesting to find out where is the beginning, why the Abraham Accords were launched this year, or last year, it's 2020. And what happened that we all understand, we all know that it was not a secret, that Israelis are traveling to the UAE, to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, other countries, Oman, even some of them to Saudi Arabia. We knew that there are relations under the table, even kind of an official relations, but there is a reason why it happened in 2020. And if I have to put responsibility on one shoulder, I will say Iran. Iran is the reason why the Abraham Accord came out and were put on the table in 2020. In September 14, 2019, a year and a bit ago, 3 o'clock in the morning in our region, a strike occurred in Saudi Arabia with 10 cruise missiles, 25 UAVs, unmanned vehicles, airplanes, that within less than an hour destroyed 50% of the capability to produce oil by Saudi Arabia. 50%, it's a dramatic damage. And Saudi Arabia was waiting to see what kind of response is going to be launched by the United States, its great ally. nothing happened. Nothing happened. And the message that was conveyed by the Iranian on this strike was a devastating message. Because, you know, if you find, what's worse, to find in an apple a full worm or half of it? We all understand that half of it is a bad situation, because it means that half of it you probably swallowed. And they have learned the lesson in the most devastating way. Mainly after seeing that the United States didn't respond. And I think that Saudi Arabia once understood that Iran is not anymore its neighbor. It's not anymore just a Muslim country. It's not an Arab country, but it's a Muslim country. They've acknowledged that Iran is an enemy. Now, in our region, the definition in the Arab arena is different than we know in our language. In English or in Hebrew you say, Oyev oivi hu yedidi, which is in English, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. In Arabic, they don't say it. In Arabic, they say, me and my brother against our cousin, me and my cousin against, me and my brother against our cousin, and me and my cousin against the strangers. And we always are the strangers. I mean the Jews, the Christians, even the non-Muslims enough people. But what happened after the strike in September 14 last year, 2019, was a dramatic event that I think that we probably don't understand it even till today, except those who are dived into it mainly in terms of intelligence or security. And Saudi Arabia understood that if Iran is their enemy and Israel is the enemy of Iran, so Israel can be the friend of Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is a key country in our region, and they are not yet prepared to launch a full diplomatic relations with Israel. And they push forward the Gulf countries, UAE, Bahrain, maybe it will followed by Oman, to sign full diplomatic relations with Israel. And that's a beginning of something very important. And within a very short time, a really very short time, UAE signed the Abraham Accords. Bahrain is a small island with a majority of Shiites, by the way. And Bahrain, together with the UAE, are part of the Abraham Accords. Sudan, on the other side of Israel, on the southwest side of Israel, that was deeply involved in smuggling weapons from Iran via Sudan to Egypt, to Sinai, and to the Gaza Strip. Weapon that was transformed to be missiles, rockets, and other devastating issues. And this Sudan is another country who is signing not yet full diplomatic relations, but it's almost diplomatic relations with Israel. It has a very profound meaning. Now, we do understand that the key country in our region is, of course, Saudi Arabia. And we hope that post the new administration in the United States, Saudi Arabia will make up their mind in order to build full diplomatic relations. It has a meaning parallel to or equivalent to the relations between Israel and Egypt. Now, we have to remember that with UAE and Bahrain and Oman, we haven't had any war. They didn't participate in any war with Israel. They don't have victims due to the war with Israel, unlike Jordan or Egypt. And as you know, the peace treaty with Egypt and Jordan is, with all respect, it's a peace treaty with the leadership, but not with the people. If you run today a free referendum in Egypt or Jordan, you'll get a majority against continuation of relations between Israel and those two countries. With the UAE, it's different. We can see it. We can touch it. when you meet the people over there, there are people who are interested in coming to Israel, in hosting Israelis, in having businesses with Israel, in a large scale of fields, high-tech, agriculture, and many other issues. Investing in Israel is something which is very tempting to the UAE, and they invest worldwide. I just had a meeting a few weeks ago with the man who is in charge of the investments outside the UAE. It's $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion. It's huge. It's something really dramatic, and they are starting to find out in what fields and which business in Israel they can invest. UAE and maybe Bahrain, and maybe later on we shall see some other countries. Of course, the problem is that is it going to be the same peace accord that we had with Qatar, with Oman, with Morocco, post the Oslo Agreement? Because in the 90s, after the Oslo Agreement was signed in 1993, the peace treaty with those countries, Qatar, Oman, Morocco, was based on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And just when we opened, if you remember, the tunnel along the Western Wall, and riots started to be run in the West Bank and in Gaza Strip, so they brought back their ambassadors from Israel, and grosso modo in 1996, the diplomatic relations were cut. They were cut totally when the Second Intifada broke out in 2000. This time, the Abraham Accord, and that's probably one of the most important issues, the Abraham Accord is not built and is not based on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It has some words, some kind of lip tax, just to say that they are not neglecting the Palestinians, but trust me, they are interested in Israel and his relations with Israel, and the Palestinians are really a side issue, but far away. Mainly after they have seen that the Palestinian Authority banned and they came out against the Abraham Accords. In the Knesset, when we confirmed the decision by the government about the Abraham Accords, the Arab Party, which is about 15 members of Knesset, they voted against. Trust me, try to imagine 15 members of Knesset, Israelis, are voting against the Abraham Accords. It's like, I don't know, like to vote against food. But they will vote as long as the Palestinian Authority will push them forward to vote against. I remember that just last week we had a meeting in my committee, and we hosted by Zoom the man who is in charge of the investments of the wealth fund in UAE, only $1 trillion funds. And one member of the committee came in from the Arab Party, and he asked permit for me to ask him a question. I gave him to talk, and he started to offense the man from the UAE. How dare you? How shame are you? You are signing with Israel, you are starting business with Israel, and you are neglecting the Palestinian problem, etc., etc. Of course, I sent them out of the room. And when I talked later on with the man in the UAE, he told me, Avi, trust me, we decided to sign peace treaty with Israel. We should do it whether the Palestinian Authority will agree or not. We are interested in connections with Israel, in relations with Israel, in your people, in your business. We do want to make business with you. And the Palestinians, they've got from us millions of dollars donations. They did with it nothing. So from now on, we are interested on Israeli-UAE relations, and all the rest is side effects. Of course, it's something that is very important for us to see that it's going all across the UAE. Israelis who are visiting there, they speak about very warm relations and very warm treating by the people over there. But when you meet with the politicians, with people who are in charge of security and other issues, those countries, the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, they are threatened to death with the Iranian threat. They do understand that these countries are based and live along the two straits, the Hormuz Straits, who lead out from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean, and from the Red Sea on the other side, and from the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean, near Yemen. And they know that those straits, Bab el-Mandab and Hormuz Straits, are two straits which are very, very significant to those Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia. And if Iran is taking control on those two straits, in Hormuz directly and in Bab el-Mandab indirectly by the Houthis, the terror organization in Yemen, who are Shiites, by the way, they are going to be in trouble. Through the Hormuz Straits, 18 million barrels are going every day from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. Through the Bab el-Mandab, it's about 6 million barrels to the Suez Canal and to Europe. And therefore, those countries, those Gulf countries, they need someone to be with them, to support them. And they thought it's only the United States, which is enough. After the attack in September 14, they've learned that it's not enough. And as we always say, if you understand that something is going wrong, try to find some other friends. Otherwise, you may find yourself exactly as Kuwait. If you remember, in 1990, within 3 days, Saddam Hussein, Allah yarhamhum, the Iraqi leader, within 3 days, conquered Kuwait, and that was the cause for the first war in Iraq. So Middle East in general, and this area along the Persian Gulf in particular is a very, very sensitive area. And thank God they've learned that it's better to find out the enemy of your enemy, because then he can be your friend, even if it's Israel, the Jewish state for the Jewish people. Thank you, Barbara.
Sorry, I was taking, I'm a compulsive note taker, so I wanted to keep track of what you were saying. Thank you so much. That is a great overview. And I had not associated that event in 2019, but that's amazing how everything fell in together. You and I spoke last week, and we said we would, because time is limited, we would focus on basically 4 questions. So the immediate impact of the Accords, what we're seeing now, the long-term impact. We'll talk a little bit more about the Palestinian Authority and how it's reacting and what may happen or whether this will affect them, and how Canada and Canadian Jews can support Israel through these developments. So in our conversation last week, you described these Accords as a very interesting meeting between money and brains, which I thought was great. Can you talk a little bit about the immediate impact of the Accords for us?
Yeah. First of all, the immediate effects of the Abraham Accords is, I think, that we can see a very good opportunity to get Saudi Arabia into an agreement. Saudi Arabia, as I said, it's not another country. It's a key country. I would call it a game changer. If Saudi Arabia, which is the heart of the Muslim world, let alone of the Sunnis, let alone of the Arab countries, we have 22 Arab countries. We have peace treaties today only with few of them, Egypt, Jordan, UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, almost, Morocco, almost. All in all, we are talking about 7 countries amongst the 22. It's not a critical mass. And we are talking just about Sunni countries. If we shall succeed in the immediate term to get Saudi Arabia into an agreement with Israel, that's, as I said, a game changer. That's something that's going to give a push to some other countries. If Saudi Arabia is in, if Egypt is in, if Morocco is in, these 3 countries are the key countries in the 22 Arab countries. So we need Saudi Arabia because Egypt is the most powerful in with the military, the biggest one. Egypt is 100 million people among 350 million Arabs in 22 Arab countries. Saudi Arabia is only 32 million people, but it hosts the most important religious parts of Islam, Mecca and Medina. And therefore, I think that, I hope that just after the new administration in the United States, and I think that Saudi Arabia was waiting to see who is going to be the next administration. I hope that Saudi Arabia will make the needed step to sign diplomatic relations with Israel. It's amazing. For us, it's something dramatic. I think that it can be done within single months. After Morocco, even Saudi Arabia is encouraged to do so. And as I said, if Saudi Arabia is doing it, we should find some more Arab countries, even in the Gulf area, that will sign full diplomatic relations with Israel. And once we cross the 11 countries, we shall isolate the Shiite countries who are the key problems for us. I mean, Iraq with 60% Shiites, Lebanon with 30% Shiites, Yemen with 40% Shiites, 3 countries who are affiliated with Iran. Iran is trying to build the axis, the northern axis from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon. The problem in Syria, if they're going to have problem in Iraq, it's going to be very beneficial for the stability of the Middle East. In Yemen, it's very important for us because of the Bab el-Mandab Strait, as I said. But Saudi Arabia as a key country, is a huge country in land. Saudi Arabia is a subcontinent with, I think, 2.5 million square kilometers. It's amazing. Israel is 22,000 square kilometers. Just try to see the proportions. So that's in the immediate term. That's something very, very needed for us, because then we can talk about a very significant step that, as Canadian, I'm not sure that you are feeling it, but as Israelis, you know, all Israelis flights has to go either above Mediterranean, above Turkey to Europe, or along the Red Sea up until Somalia, and then we go east to India and Bangkok, which makes it very, very long for us. I'll try to share with you the map of the region, just to explain the meaning for Israel about those accords. If you see the map, all right, if you see the map, now we are allowed to fly above Jordan, we are allowed to fly about Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman. So try to imagine, instead of flying this way, follow the arrow here, instead of flying all the way down to the Red Sea and here to take east to India and Bangkok, we shall fly directly. It cuts 2 hours flights. It will enable direct flights to Australia. Same as we fly to Los Angeles and San Francisco from Tel Aviv, we shall be able to fly direct flights to Sydney. It will take about 16 hours, which a plane can do it. That's the time it takes to Los Angeles. and it's going to be a dramatic change, no doubt about it. I hope that this is going to be in the coming few months. Even if we are not going to have full diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia, we're going to get the permit to fly above Saudi land. On the other hand, Sudan, in order to fly from Israel to South America, we don't have direct flights. We have to fly to Europe, to land over Spain, Frankfurt, whatever, to change planes. It takes a whole day. The problem was that we cannot fly above, we couldn't fly above Sudan, and we could fly above Egypt, but then if you want to go west, we have to fly. Here it's Libya, so we cannot fly above Libya. Here it's Chad and then Nigeria. So what was needed is to have a peace treaty with Sudan. Once we have with Sudan, we can fly directly from Tel Aviv, Egypt, Sudan, Chad, Nigeria, Atlantic Ocean to South America. It's a flight about 10 hours, you are in South America, but at the same time even shorter from South America to Israel. So you understand that for Israel, tourism from South America directly to Israel, it's amazing. It's going to be something very dramatic. We cannot start it now due to the COVID-19, but I believe that in the second half of 2021, these flights we shall start seeing it. It's a dramatic change. So in any aspect that you see the Abraham Accords in the immediate time, it's something that's really going to make a change. As I said, investments, the UAE started to ask about possible investments in Israel. And I think that if you have $1.5 trillion investment outside the UAE, in Israel, they can have, I would say, a lot of issues. They're trying to invest in high-tech, Israeli high-tech. They try to bring from Israel systems of irrigation, water desalination, and other issues that we are experts in desert agriculture. So it's going to be started in the immediate time. And for the long term, I'm sure we are going to see a dramatic change in it. And if things will continue as it seems today, I think that within 5 years, we shall be in a totally different situation in the Middle East.
Sorry, it just took me a second to unmute. That is really quite fascinating. I appreciate that you showed us the map because it makes it a lot easier to understand. Can we talk about Sudan for 1 second? Because that is a little different from the other countries because it has been, it has helped terror and terrorism and weapons. So your peace or your accord with them is going to have to be a little, you have to be a little more careful with that one, shall we say?
Absolutely, you are absolutely right, Baba. Sudan, first of all, we don't have one Sudan, we have two Sudans. As you know, Sudan have two leaders, and it's very, very fragile. You sign with one of them, you have to make sure that the second one is going with the first one, and who is going to break it and who's going to make it. It's ain't easy, but it's for us. It's a change because Sudan used to be a jumping board for illegal weapon, explosives, rockets, knowledge of how to build kind of weapons, accurate weapon. It used to come from Iran via Sudan into Egypt to Sinai and to the Gaza Strip. So with Sudan, it's going to be more careful. But Sudan is a country that we have a history with them. If you remember when we brought the Ethiopian Jewish people, right, we brought them via Sudan. And so I think that there is something that is going to be very helpful in building those relations with Sudan. It's a poor country. Unlike the Gulf countries, it's totally different. So I'm optimistic about Sudan because they have a lot to lose if they don't have relations with Israel. And that's why I'm very optimistic. We have to be very careful not to build relations with leaders that one day might be seen as butchers. And in this area, we know that you cannot be a partner, let alone Israel, cannot be a partner of any administration who becomes a butcher, like it happened in some countries in this region. But it's very important for us, for a state like Israel that used to live with one international airport, that all flights are coming and going from Europe. Suddenly you can fly east, you can fly west, you can fly north. For us, it's a dramatic change, By the way, I think it's going to boost the business and relations with Jordan as well. Because Jordan was a little bit afraid to be seen as a pioneer in strengthening the relations with Israel. And now, once they see that there are more and more countries, and amongst the Arab countries, the Arab League, who is representing 22 Arab countries, now they're not alone. Today, there are 7 countries. Hopefully, they will increase to 11, 12. When you have a majority, that's something different, absolutely something different. I don't know how it's going to affect the Palestinian issues and the Palestinian Authority, because over there they are still back behind. It's your floor, Barbara. No, I don't hear you. You're
Sorry, the
on
host.
mute. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm good now. Do you think the Palestinians will feel pressure if the countries around them are now friendly with Israel? Will there be any motivation for them to come to the table, as it were, or do you think they will become increasingly isolated?
I work with the Palestinians and against the Palestinians for 4 decades. And to predict what the Palestinians are going to do, I mean, it's harder than lottery. Because whenever you think they're going to do something right, they're going to do something wrong. For example, when they came out against the Abraham Accords, now they understand that it was wrong. They understand that they are going to see problems with Israel, with the Arab countries, UAE and others, Morocco, and with the United States. So they started to be a little bit more modest about their rejection to the April Accords, but they cannot say, well, sorry, we were mistaken and we want to behave in a different way, in an opposite way. It's not the nature of the Palestinians. So they're trying to be a little bit more modest with it. How it's going to be translated into action items on the ground, it's hard to say. It's hard to say because the Palestinian Authority is now in a situation that the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, is almost 85. He's surrounded with people who are waiting to see when he's going to leave the stage, and nobody knows who is going to replace him. So steps like trying to build something new, we don't see it yet. What happened is that the Arab countries decided to talk directly with Israel, never mind what the Palestinian Authority is saying, unlike what we used to see before. And the nations that used to be given very generously before, they now are asking questions. Mainly those countries who are building something new with Israel, like the UAE, like Bahrain, like Oman, and let alone when Saudi is going to do it, the questions are going to be very, very tough towards the Palestinian Authority. On the other hand, we have a problem with the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is dominated by Hamas. Palestinian Authority has no influence on what's going on in the Gaza Strip. Trust me, Barbara, you have more influence on Gaza Strip than Mahmoud Abbas. And that's one of our problems. So while we talk about one Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, we have another Palestinian Authority in Gaza Strip. So it's a problem for us, and we have to take care of it very, very carefully, and to make sure that the relations with the Arab countries is not going to push us to the corner when it comes to the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, or when it comes to Palestinian Authority in Gaza. So it's really something complicated. We shall have to destroy, in my eyes, we shall have to destroy and dismantle the whole military capabilities who were built in Gaza Strip, period. Either by agreements, which I think is not going to happen, or by force. And we have to understand that it's not going to be a fast break of days, weeks, or months. It's going to take more than a year, same as it happened during the Second Intifada. So with the Palestinians, it's going to be a long story. A long story, and those who believe that was the Palestinians going to be same procedure as it happened with the UAE, so I'm sorry to say it's not. It's not going to be neither fast nor easy, if at all. We are 26 years after the Palestinian Authority was established, and we do understand that the Oslo Accords failed. 27 years after, we have to admit, Oslo Accords failed. So what kind of replacement we are going to see, it will take time. I don't know to tell you, and nobody can say, no, neither is nor Israelis, neither Palestinians nor Israelis. But as I said before, if amongst the 22 Arab countries, we are going to get a critical mass of Arab countries, that's going to create some changes that we cannot predict it today.
Thank you so much. That's a really interesting answer, and I appreciate that. Our time has gone so fast, but I did have one final question that if you can answer quickly. What role can Canada and Canadian Jews have in supporting Israel at this time?
Yeah, that's a great point, Baba. I think that if I were you, if I were Trudeau in Canada, I'm telling you there's only one mission, which is for Israel and for the whole region and for the whole world. There is an enemy of freedom, of democracy, of security, of stability in the whole region, named Iran. You know, Iran, if Canada can do something, is to join the countries who are doing literally everything to prevent Iran from building nuclear weapons. That's going to be a disaster. It's going to be North Korea #2. Mm-hmm. Now, if you remember, before the agreement in 2015 and post the agreement, there was not even one case that in all discussions of nuclear sites and nuclear capabilities, not even one case that Iran brought to the table something and said, that's what we have. Either a site or capability. Not even once. In all cases, information was put in front of them and they had to answer the questions. So we really have a deal and relations, I mean the whole world, not Israel, with a country that is ambitious to reach nuclear weapons. The masterman of the nuclear weapon was just killed in near Tehran, but it's not built on one man. Never mind who killed him, he is a great man. I mean the one who killed him, of course, not the one who was killed. The one who was killed was a key person for the nuclear weapon, but they will find a way to bypass his loss and to find another one or another group to continue and to hide it from the whole world. If there is a role that the Canadian leadership can do, and you can do towards the Canadian leadership, is to make sure that in Canada, people and leaders understand that the Iranian threat is something very, very significant to the whole region. It's the main reason, I wouldn't say it's the only reason, but it's the main reason why the Abraham Accords were launched, why Saudi Arabia will do it, why other countries will do it. Now, for Israel, there's no existential threat towards Israel today. If Iran is going to be equipped with nuclear bombs, it's going to be for the first time since established that Israel is going to confront an existential threat.
Yeah.
And that's something that we have to be fully aware of it. That's why the Prime Minister Netanyahu went to the two houses in the United States to talk, to convince them, to try to convince them about the threat from Iran. And those who are optimistic about it, I send them to read what was written towards North Korea at the beginning of the 90s, when the agreement was signed in 1994, I think, and they broke the agreement and developed nuclear weapon. And you can read every day almost the developments of North Korea in terms of nuclear bombs. It shouldn't be repeated with Iran. That's, I would say, Barbara and my friends, that's the main role I would expect Canada to play. All other issues are very important. This is the most important issue that democratic countries, normal countries, allies are being expected to do, as far as I can tell you.
As you say, it threatens Israel's existence, but it also threatens the rest of the world very seriously. Thank you. I heard your clock go off 7 o'clock, so thank you so much, Avi. This has been really interesting, and as I say, it has flown by. I'm just going to turn you over to Sharon to do the official thanks, and if everyone can just stay on the line for a few more minutes, we've gone over a bit, but not too much. So I really appreciate this, and I look forward.
I just want to say, Barbara, to you and to the whole people who are watching us now, I hope that the next meeting will be tete-a-tete, either here in Israel or in Canada, if it's possible, not winter time, and really to see each other, to hug again, to shake hands. It's we really miss it. I think that only we shall do it, we should understand what does it mean to lose a year or a year and something. So as we say, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. So I mean it, next year in Jerusalem. And if you invite me, I promise you to come.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sharon, can I turn it over to you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, MK Dichter, for those fascinating insights on how we can hopefully continue to build and strengthen relationships with Israel's Arab nations, and how Canadians, we can help to support the progress and security for Israelis. And I echo your sentiments. Next year this year, I don't want to even say next year, I want to say this year, 2021 in Jerusalem, where we can all gather together face to face safely and continue and maybe do a check-in progress report on how we sit with the countries that have already come in to the Abraham Accords and the ones that we so much want to join. Before we wrap up today's program, I want to just take one quick moment to acknowledge the amazing team of professionals that I get to work with, and I'm very fortunate. Alana Albert-Novick has been an amazing resource, not only with this Negev event, but with my transition into the new role, as has Sue David in Atlanta, Canada, and our national team led by CEO Lance Davis, particularly the marketing department, who helps to pull all of these things together and often a very quick timeline. So I appreciate all of that and all of your hard work. Over the next few weeks, JNF Ottawa will be launching its annual campaign known as the Tu B'Shvat campaign. Our Negev event typically occurs in the fall, but in true 2020 fashion, that wasn't possible this past year. So this year's Tu B'Shvat falls on January 28th. We do recognize how close together these two campaigns are scheduled this year and appreciate the support that you have shown us through this event. One of this year's projects that we're investing in is the revitalization of the Plugot Forest, and in appreciation of him sharing his insights today with JNF Canada, we will be planting 100 trees in honor of MK Dichter. So thank you again, and it's a little way that we can help to grow the beautiful landscape of Israel. And you can read more about, I'm not going to take time now, but you can read more about this project is much more involved than just planting trees. There's a huge component to it as well that you will receive. So everyone on the call today, I want to just extend another thank you for joining us, for your support, for your ongoing commitment. And it's because of you that we are building the foundation of Israel's future. Thank you again for joining us today, and enjoy your afternoon and evening for those of us in Israel.